Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Anusha Soni. The government has brought key changes to the IT Rules 2021. A major change has been brought through this amendment for social media intermediaries. This includes the likes of Twitter or Facebook. Now, these companies will have to take down content which is related to government once it has been flagged by a proposed authorized body or an agency tagged as fake or misleading. Now, the social media company or the intermediary must comply or face legal action. The move has also led to criticism from the opposition parties that claim that this is an assault on free speech. Is this move of the government proportionate and legitimate? In the run-up to the 2024, how valid is the criticism of the opposition party? We'll talk about all these aspects. First up, a special report.
We have carved out what is prohibited.
India's IT ministry has declared a war against misinformation and fake news. The battlefield is the social media space, and the larger objective is to ensure compliance. There's a new amendment to the IT Rules 2021 in India. It allows Ministry of Electronics and IT to appoint a fact-checking body. This body shall take a call on whether the online information related to the central government is accurate or not. On paper, what the final rules now lay down is that an online intermediary should make reasonable efforts to not to host content which is related to the central government and which has been identified as fake or misleading by an authorized body. The intermediaries include social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and even internet service providers like Airtel, Jio, Vodafone, and their associated platforms. In a sense, any piece of information pertaining to government, if it is marked as fake or misleading by the proposed fact-check unit, the social media intermediary is bound to act. In the event of failure, the company would risk losing their legal immunity, an immunity which protects them from any kind of litigation for hosting third-party content.
The need to regulate in a very small segment of gaming, which is gaming that involves wagering. Everything else is unregulated. As far as the government fact-checking, that consultation was done with all the intermediaries.
Let's talk about the concerns. Civil society groups, Editors Guild and social media platforms have expressed concerns. They claim that the rules could hamper speech online. But the minister concerned has assured that the government-backed fact-check body will work in a credible and a responsible manner. Misinformation and fake news is a major issue in India. Owing to the diverse demography and a large population that is starting to access the internet, India is amongst the biggest markets for social media platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, and YouTube. These platforms collectively have hundreds and millions of active users. So will this move of the government help in curbing fake news in the run-up to 2024 and make social media platforms more responsible? Or this amendment will curb free speech, as is being accused by the opposition? Well, that's the story so far. Let's first tell you what is a social media intermediary and how will these guidelines/rules apply on these companies. What is an intermediary? Twitter, Facebook, or any other social media site that does not generate content on its own is called an intermediary. Most social media companies can be classified the same. These intermediaries, they mostly host third-party content on their platforms. They claim to have limited control over this third-party content and hence only in certain limited circumstances they are legally liable for any kind of objectionable material that they have put on their website or on the hosting platforms. The IT rules lay down guidelines and responsibilities for such social media intermediaries to ensure that there is greater compliance. These are big global companies and getting compliance from them for the law of the land here in India has been a huge challenge. Let's come to the point as to why the government has notified these amendments and what exactly these amendments to the IT Rules 2021 really are. Under the notified changes, one crucial part has been brought to the way to bring in liability for the intermediary companies, and it shall be fixed. The government has brought a change to Section 31B, Part 5. Under this section, under the IT Rules 2021, it lays down the responsibility of these intermediaries. After the proposed change, once the government authorized body has flagged a certain content, that company is bound to take it down. That's what the rules lay down. Failure to take down the information or the content can result in legal liability. The government goes on to say that once the authorized agency has flagged the content, say fake news or misleading, the intermediary cannot claim any kind of legal immunity, which is usually granted. That's what this amendment does. The government can flag the content which is directly related to the government. This is information which is particularly related to the government, and that will be something which is under their, powers and control. A special body, as I mentioned, or a fact check unit shall be authorized by the government to flag this content. Section 79 of the IT rules provide legal immunity to intermediaries. And after this change, this particular immunity is gone. The effect of the amendment to the rules is that the legal immunity does not exist anymore once a content has been flagged. The failure to take action shall invite action in law. Why is the government backing this amendment? What exactly is the reasoning? The government argues that there is a need to curb on fake news. Social media intermediaries need to adhere to the guidelines of the government. The government has prescribed this amendment only for information pertaining to the government bodies and their own functions and information that they want to put out. The government also goes on to say that their approach is proportionate. They're not talking about every information under the sun, but only information that pertains to government bodies. The concerned minister has also argued that this entire issue is not about censorship versus free speech, but rather about greater compliance to the law of the land here in India. Well, as expected, the opposition parties and activists are up in arms and criticizing the move of the government. Why this criticism? Critics argue that the move is aimed at curbing free speech here in India. The fact that social media plays a huge role in today's politics, it cannot be ignored. It is further argued that the move is disproportionate and gives unchecked wide powers to the government of the day. The opposition parties and critics also argue that the amendment is violative of Article 19, right to free speech, which is a fundamental right in this country. Coming to the last bit, what is the final effect of this change or this particular amendment on the rule book? Number one, the move shall affect the social media companies and the end users as well. Once the government-appointed body flags a content, social media company or the intermediary will have to take action. That's an important step. Immunity from legal action is done away with after the amendment. Social media companies or intermediaries can face civil and criminal liability in court of law. Users shall also have a right to complain and seek legal remedy and move appropriate forums if they want to. Social media intermediaries shall have to act once the proposed government body flags the content, otherwise Section 79 will kick in. That's broadly the story so far, but as I said earlier, there is of course a debate, the free speech versus the need to regulate content on social media that has kicked in. Joining us on the broadcast is Charu Pragya from the BJP. We also have Sujata Paul of the Congress Party, Rahul Narayan, who's an advocate from the Supreme Court of India, and Mr. Jiten Jain, who's a cyber expert, is joining us on the broadcast. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for speaking with us. Charu, coming to you first. I read this proposed change in the IT rules, and if one goes to the wording of it, I want to point out two things. One, the government is absolutely right in saying that the content that they're talking about is strictly the content that pertains to the government. But the opposition and critics are asking you that suppose there is an opinion which pertains to a certain policy of the government and the government doesn't like it. They flag the content, will it be taken down? And can this particular change be misused? Is the question which is put out in the public domain. Please answer that.
Anusha, good evening.
Good evening.
We have to draw a clear distinction between people not being agreeable with the policy and blatantly spreading fake facts and news. So, and our IT minister has very clearly differentiated between the two. You want to criticize something, you want to give an opinion, you are of course allowed to do so, and nobody is interfering with free speech here, whether spoken on media or on social media. But at the same time, if you claim to be somebody who's imparting facts, figures, any kind of information which you claim is true, then it does deserve to be fact checked and checked in some way. And IT rules were got in for a very valid reason. Now we know in this world of social media, this entire new world of virtuality that exists today around us, there has to be a fact check on things. There has to be a redressal forum if somebody is spreading fake news, telling lies, or resorting to anything that we would deem to be either illegal, immoral. There has to be a redressal system, and that is the system that has been put in place by these IT rules. I don't know why the opposition wants to get deeper than that very basic fact, which makes all of us more secure when we use social media, and politicize it. Are you trying to imply that you cannot differentiate between giving your opinion and stating facts? Are you trying to imply that when you're discussing a policy, you cannot do so in a manner which is both critical but also acceptable in a way where in this world, that there have been so many instances when the position of India has been misrepresented. There has been so many instances where we've realized rights have broken out because of some kind of news on social media which later turned out to be false. We know that cities can be burnt down by spreading fake news. So on one side, all political parties say this propagation of fake news has to stop. But when the government takes a very firm, concrete and transparent stand in doing so, you want to criticize it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And this is protection for every single Indian citizen.
While I agree that when it comes to free speech and its relationship with any ruling government of the day, whether the Congress or the BJP, it's a troublesome relationship, and journalists must look at it with a lot of caution and careful criticism, I must argue. The argument that the minister concerned is making here is that this is not about free speech and censorship. This is a change that they have brought to the rules to ensure that once certain information has been flagged by the government as fake news or something which is ill-informed or bound to create some kind of problem, the social media company must act. If they do not act, they still have a choice to say, look, we are not going to act, we think this is perfectly fine. They can be dragged to a court of law. How does this qualify as a free speech issue versus something where government is trying to only seek compliance from these social media companies? Sujata ji.
First of all, Ms. Soni, I am amused that the spokesperson of the party that has the biggest fake peddling machinery is talking about protecting people from fake news, because they are the ones who've been spreading fake news. And
I also take
what
offense
concerns
at
me
that.
are two things.
Who is Sujata to claim who's peddling fake news?
Have I said anything about you right now?
I'll give Charuji the full time to respond.
Yes, you have.
Sujata
No,
ji,
you will
Sujata
not
ji,
speak in between. You will not speak in between.
I request both of you one at a time. Sujata ji right now. I'll come to Charu Pragya. Sujata ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
What is this lunacy? I don't understand. I am making a point. I did not speak when Ms. Pragya was speaking.
What kind of language is this,
the point is
did
I
target her personally? Did I take her name?
That means you're on the back foot.
All right. Can I please request both of you? One second.
I'm sorry, I deserve an apology.
One second.
How can she call this lunacy? I'm allowed to my opinion. She's
Charu Pragya, Sujata ji. I want to see this. One second, please. Sujata ji, one second. My request to both of you, please do not make any individual or personal comments on each other. You both are very well learned women.
I didn't.
We can debate on the substance. We can debate on the substance without getting personal with each other. Can we please go back to the issue? Sujata ji, make your point.
Miss Soni.
Yes.
Let her offer an apology.
Absolutely. And I want to clarify that lunacy is an abstract noun. I did not call anybody a lunatic.
Good that you put.
Coming back to the point.
Yeah.
As far as what the government is trying to do is basically say that all the fake news articles which are related to the union government and which are going to be deemed and declared as fake news by PIB. That means anything that troubles the government of today and is deemed to be fake news will be asked to be brought down. This proves that this government does not want people to speak up. Just like it has, behaved in the parliament. the same way it is trying to muzzle free speech. The point is that in 2021 also, when Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad was the IT minister, he said exactly something similar. And now Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekharan, who is the Minister of State now for IT, is coming up with something which is taking that forward. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to tell people that they cannot speak? If there is a video which comes from any remote corner of the country, of the world, and that is posted, but it shows the government in bad light, are you going to say that that is fake news because that troubles you? That is what the government is trying to do. It is trying to muzzle free speech. It is going. That is why it has given. Is giving sweeping powers to PIB, and it wants that content which
that's
is
fake news.
problematic to the
Maybe
government
Sujata did not update herself with what the Honorable Minister said.
Sujata ji, one more point,
No,
and then
no,
I'll go back
can
to
I
you.
quickly-
One
can I
second.
quickly come in?
Charu, I'm
Because
coming back to you.
Minister
Charu, I'm
very
coming
clearly
back to you.
said
Charu, I'm coming
that
back to you. I'm
it's
coming
not
back to you.
PIB.
Sujata ji, I want to ask you
Yeah.
one more point. The minister concerned has said that there
Yes.
would be a special body that will be set up, and this body will have representatives from different sector, which is appropriate. And this body is going to ensure that there is no fake news which is in some way put out in the public domain, which can cause a larger problem. This is empowering a particular body with certain kind of regulatory powers under the IT Act, which is the law of the land, to ensure that the menace of the fake news is contained. The body may be new in nature. It may have more people. It is not clear at this point in time whether the present formula will work or there's something new. The minister has hinted that perhaps new additions can be made to that body. So it might not be the same body that you're referring to. Sujata ji.
Yes, so there are a few points here. This is a self-regulatory body that they are talking about.
Yeah.
Now, if you are going to have people who are going to come up with certain rules, how fair is it going to be? Because before this itself, the social media companies had given a proposal for tackling fake news. Why did the government not take action on that? They should have brought the social media, groups on board. If they had spoken to these companies and come up with some, taken some suggestions from them, probably this would have been a better idea.
All right.
But when you are talking about a
Yeah.
self-regulatory organization coming
Can I
in,
quickly
how
rebut?
transparent is it going to be? Because it is the government which will talk about, problems.
I want to bring in Rahul and Jitin also into the discussion.
So, one
Charu
last
ji,
point.
Yes,
One
yes.
last
Finish your
point.
point. Finish your point. Finish your point.
Yeah, one last point. When they talk about, the country becoming a Vishwa Guru, it's all very well. But when somebody speaks against the Vishwa Guru within the country also, then they say that it's an international conspiracy. So in times of social media, it is very difficult to curb that. But yes, trolls is what they must go after. Cyber crimes is what they must go after. And I wish they had taken action on that more than trying to curb
Charu,
free
I'm
speech.
sure you have a lot of points that you want to respond to. There's one point I want to add, and then I'll go to Jitin and Rahul as well, who are with us on the broadcast. The government cannot be the sole arbiter as to what is an acceptable narrative about the information that the government wants to put out. You'd agree that this is a free country, it's a democratic country, different people have different opinion and version. And unless a particular opinion is outrightly outrageous in nature or provocative in nature, the government shouldn't interfere with that kind of narrative or anything going on in the public domain, in the public discourse.
Yeah. Can I? So, I definitely agree with what you're saying, Anusha, and that's exactly what our Honorable Minister has said today. If Sujata had bothered to listen to his statement in totality, he's very clear when he says it's not going to be PIB Fact Check per se, but there is going to be an independent body of credible people with absolute representation of different sections of society, ideologies, who are going to decide what is correct and what is not, and why not, what is wrong with that. See, in any case, when you're in a country like India, there is going to be conflicting opinions about everything, and nobody is stopping that. Let's make that one thing very clear. And this government, with all the dialogues that you hear from the opposition and especially the Congress, the fact that they're able to say all this and get away with it is because there is free speech in this country. So I want to clarify that when Sujata mentions PIB, she has not checked her own facts, and she's in fact misleading on your channel right now. That's not what the minister said. And secondly, the IT rules actually do do talk about cybercrime. They do talk about morphing of images. They do talk about pornography. It does talk about illegal online gaming. Every single thing that is going to worry a citizen of India today who has a virtual existence in the social media space will have everything that's important taken care of. And, that's what these laws are for. As the world evolves, our laws are evolving, and the new IT rules are taking care of all of that. Unfortunately, the opposition picks on these things because, like I just said, example, she's spreading fake news about PIB right now. That is what the opposition does best.
Sujata ji were to put out this tweet, no, one second. So if Sujata ji were to put out this tweet,
but there is an opinion and a fact,
will the
and
agency,
you cannot pass off your opinion as a
will
fact.
the agency flag it, and will that be taken down? That's the concern that the opposition is raising.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And why
And
should that be a problem? Can she not say this is my opinion?
Okay.
Why
No.
is she saying
You will
that
have
this
a
is a fact
fact
when you
check
don't know
unit.
that's a fact? Give
No,
your opinion.
You are the one
All
who's
right,
spreading fake
I want to
news.
bring in Rahul and Jitin Jain also into the discussion beyond the political narrative. Jitin, coming to you, you've heard the political representatives. And in the sharp, politically polarized opinions, we are unlikely to find the position of law and policy. Why don't you help us understand the move of the government? How do you view it? And is it proportionate to the aim which it seeks to deliver? Jitin,
we must leave the politics apart and talk about the law.
Sure.
And we must also speak about the problem this law or rules are trying to solve. See, the problem is, disinformation and fake news is a problem in every country, especially democracies where there is a free press.
Yeah.
But the problem here in India is multifold because we are facing in last 5 years coordinated disinformation campaigns by our adversary, which has got a specialized dedicated military disinformation agency called ISPR, Inter-Services Public Relations. And we have discussed many times on this channel also how ISPR with a budget of 3,000 crores has been continuously running misinformation campaigns about India. And let's take 5 examples so that our viewers, our citizens can also understand what is the problem we as a nation are facing. Number one, ISPR ran a massive social media, electronic media disinformation campaign that nothing happened during Balakot strikes. Only 5 trees were hurt and 5 crores were hurt. And not even a single terrorist was killed.
Yeah.
Now, they also spread a lie that hundreds and thousands of Kashmiri youth have been brutally killed by Indian Army during the abrogation of Article 370. All of them are fake news, and sometimes some of these facts are then, repeated and narrated by some of the, low-spin leaders in India, which just for making some political gains or getting some media attention, repeat those comments. And these comments then are further repeated, propagated, and amplified by these same very disinformation agencies, especially in the Middle East, to, destroy the secular image of India. Third, ISPR has also been consistently running a campaign to create religious fictions. Sometimes destabilize the country, sometimes influence elections in our country. Take for example, they ran massive multiple videos and fake images campaign and sometimes retweeted even by their former ministers, cabinet ministers, that hundreds of Muslim women were killed on the streets of Delhi, how Delhi police were killing children, and most of them were tweeting
Jitin, all these examples you're citing is a reminder of how dangerous the fake news can get.
Now, please let me.
Yes, the law.
Let me complete. Let me complete. Now, so what happens? These agencies, apart from putting out several fake, tweets, social media posts to influence the society, they also run several, fake news portals. Sometimes they plant information on reputed news sites by projecting fake facts. Now, sometimes our electronic and print media also fall for those facts, and they publish something which is completely contrary and devoid of any facts. Now, this law is trying to solve a problem. We want to know that who is running a particular news websites, and it was debated earlier also why every news portal in India needs to register. Now, there was a huge hullabaloo that you're trying to curb free speech, but you name any reputed channel or any reputed news website or even an online portal like Print, Quint, or Wire, whatever. At least we know who runs that portal and who is a responsible person. But there are hundreds of several small news websites which are mostly spreading fake news and disinformation, and we do not even know whether it is a Pakistani or
Jitin,
something who's running that website.
I'm
Now,
sorry,
that is the problem.
Jitin, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you.
How do we deal with that?
One second, let me just try, because you have huge information there with you. I want to streamline this information. The enormity of the problem that you're pointing out with the examples that you've just stated points out that how sometimes misinformation can threaten national security and internal security as well. My question to you is very pointed. What the government has done through the change in the rule, does it solve that problem, and does it solve it proportionally? Because the question that the opposition parties are raising is that this is too wide a power. You are using a problem for your own political benefits. That's the allegation which has been made. Why don't you talk about that?
No, they are They are partially correct that it will solve a problem, but definitely they're not using it for political gains. It may partially solve the problem. It will not completely solve the problem. I'll give you an example. Now, what is safe harbor provision, which is debated about? It says, I mean, it is a construct of 30 years ago of 1980s. We said that any service provider like your telecom service provider like Airtel or Hutch, if somebody makes a threatening call or fakes a call about a fake bomb or someplace, the telecom service provider will not be responsible if a terrorist is misusing a telecom network. Likewise, people said that if a user is posting something on internet, you don't put the ISP owner in the jail or a website owner in the jail. Now, the social media companies wanted to take advantage of same provision. They said, look, Facebook or Twitter, we are like an open book. So if somebody comes and tweets or posts something, they are responsible, not us, because we are like an open book. Now, that was okay till 5-7 years ago. But from last 5 years, these very social media companies have assumed the role of judge, jury and executioner. They moderate the content, they delete the content, they censor the content, they block the content, they boost the content. They do everything what an editor in a newsroom does. So once they do that, then they have to assume responsibility of that content, and they cannot enjoy the provision of safe harbor, because the law says that you can only enjoy the safe harbor protections under two conditions. One, when you are not touching the content, you are not doing anything with the content. You just let it pass through, you have no role with the content.
Sure.
Second, if a content which is illegal or unlawful is brought to your notice, and if you don't remove it, then you are liable under the law. Now, what this law will do, once a government agency flags a content as fake news or disinformation, they are not saying that you have to remove it. It is your choice under Section 79. Government will just flag it and inform you. But if you decide not to take down that, you have then every legal liability if somebody goes to court tomorrow, and you cannot claim the safe harbor protections. That is going to change the entire landscape, because, for example, when government flagged 1200 Twitter handles during farmer rights which were spreading misinformation and fake news, Twitter said we will not take it down because we don't think it is fake news.
And I want to add
to what Jiten is saying, that or if you don't want to
not
take it down,
just here in India, whether it's US, whether it's Europe, to get compliance from these social media companies has been a tricky task for many sovereign governments across the world, and I'm talking about democratic
then there is a problem.
I want to bring in Rahul as well into the discussion.
Just
I want to bring in
15 seconds. Just 15 seconds.
Yes, finish your
Just
point.
15 seconds.
Yes,
just 15 seconds. Now there is a problem. So you can only apply the law on the people who are willing to comply with the law. So every Indian entity, I am assuming, will comply with the law.
Yeah.
But I don't know how will we control these foreign websites which are actually spreading misinformation, which are run and propagated by these hostile disinformation agencies. They will just not comply with the law. So
that's exactly what they've done. That's exactly what they've done. There are various litigations which are going on in the Supreme Court as well. I remember there was once a litigation where there were certain objectionable materials being sold on Google through certain platform, and they wanted to bring some kind of compliance. It was very difficult even for the Supreme Court of India to ensure that Google complies with that, and other private companies were also a part of it. Rahul, I want to come to you and taking in a point from you. While the opposition has all the right to put the government in the dock and question them that whether what they've done is proportionate, is it legitimate, and are they well within their rights to really do that, but a lot of focus also needs to shift as to how these social media companies are operating here in India and whether they are compliant with the law of the land. The union government on repeated occasions has pointed out that on many occasions, like the farmer protest was being pointed about, or certain riots that have happened in the past, that social media and the manner in which it's moderating content is not enough, and these companies have been known to violate or perhaps not follow the law of the land when they are asked to.
See, I think that as far as social media company compliance, there certainly was an issue earlier, but to a large extent, the issue was resolved in 2021 when these rules were brought in. When they, for example, made it compulsory to have grievance redressals, and for example, when they said that you have to have a person in India to ensure that all court orders or government orders are complied with. The question today is that whether one agency which has been declared to be a sole source of truth, whether that is in conformity with the principles of free speech. And I think you put it very nicely when you said that it is not necessarily proportionate. Now, I understand, and of course I completely agree with Jiten ji that fake news is a real severe problem, and it's not faced only by us, it's faced by countries all over the world. In fact, if you, in England, for example, in 2016, when Brexit took place, or in 2016 again when President Trump was elected, there was a great deal of apprehension all over the world. To what extent did fake news have a role to play in this narrative. And of course, in 2021, when President Trump had been voted out, the riots which took place in America on January 6th. So these are issues which are, concerning all over the world.
Yeah.
But the point is simply this, as far as news about national security or news about public order is concerned, that can be blocked under existing rules. Why do you need one agency to tell you that this is the truth and everybody is going to follow that this is the truth? I mean, as a free speech lawyer, I mean, I find it completely ironical because let me give you a 1 minute background as to the history of free speech.
Yeah.
What did free speech actually mean? It basically meant that in the 1600s in England, there was a law that you couldn't publish a single book without getting prior approval from the government.
Yeah.
So when that licensing requirement for publishing everything was removed, that is basically what historically was meant by free speech. That you don't need anybody's permission to say whatever you want.
Rahul,
you say what you want and you suffer the consequences.
I'll take that point
if, for example, there's defamation.
Sujata ji, a company like Facebook was questioned in the US and many other parts of the world for interfering with democracies. If you want to study at any leading universities, in fact, now there are courses which are designed that talk about how social media companies are interfering in the democratic processes and unduly interfering, changing the minds of the people and how they are looking at voters and their entire perception. There is a need to curb down on fake news. I am sure the Congress party realizes it. And more importantly, in the run-up to 2024, social media is as important to you as it is for the BJP. And if you think that these rules are in some way wrong, illegal and disproportionate, are you going to challenge this, ma'am?
First of all, as far as these rules are concerned, I take your point that fake news is not the way it should be. Fake news is dangerous for everybody. But you're right. Like Facebook was used to tamper with democracy, and Facebook has done it in India big time. And if you see how how the reach of the opposition party pages has been reduced in the last 4 or 5 years, you will see for yourself that democracy is being tampered with by using social media platforms by the government. And here the biggest fake news, because I've been on many debates with Mr. Jitin Jain in 2021 regarding this same issue. So when you already have rules for something, what are you talking about when you talk about national security? It's not national security. It is national insecurity of the BJP government, because they're scared that people will ask questions, because people have already started asking questions of Modani, Adani and so on. But the biggest fake news which was propagated by this government was na koi ghusa hai, na koi ghusa hua hai, when Chinese transgression was happening into our land. So this is the kind of fake news that should be banned.
I want to restrict this discussion once again back to the IT rules 2021 and the changes that have been made. Sujata ji, last point, then I will give one last minute to Charu also. Yes.
Yes, my last point is that instead of banning everything around you because it upsets you, because we saw how the government had banned the Chinese apps instead of Chinese companies. So the government needs to relook the whole thing and stop trying to curb free speech, because this is a democracy. You cannot allow government to act on its own.
I have last 1 minute on the show. It's only fair I bring in Charu into the discussion.
Democracy is part.
Charu, I want to
come to representative.
Jitin, 30 seconds to you. Quickly, please. Jitin, 30 seconds. What's your question?
Question number one.
Yeah.
When the question number one, what will happen tomorrow? Suppose if all state legislatures decide to pass their own state law, and during elections they start, flagging everything as fake, which is not politically convenient. So what will happen? I think this is a question to both Sujata and Charu. Second,
sure.
I think we'll be better off if the complete control of this mechanism during the model code of conduct of any elections is transferred to the election commission. So there'll be an integrity.
I think those are very productive points that you've made. Charu, you want to respond to both of them, please?
Especially,
yes,
no, but when
Charu,
suggestions, and the IT minister has already said this is an evolving space. Should I repeat myself? Yeah. So, Jitin, thank you. That is a very constructive suggestion, and I'm sure the IT Minister is keeping all of that in mind. And like I said, this is still an evolving space. The online space is very fast to evolve, and he was very clear when he said today that he's going to set up a mechanism which addresses all our issues. At the same time, I just want to point out again how
One at a
Congress
time.
passes off
Arbitrarily.
opinion.
One at a time.
As
Charu
a
Pragya right now.
democrat,
Charu
I
Pragya
dislike
right
the
now.
way you
People's
debate.
voice
I
Charu
dislike
Pragya,
to
Charu
debate like
Pragya,
this,
Charu
and I
Pragya.
refuse
I just
to-
want Charu
I
right
refuse
now.
to
don't
like
like
Charu
how
Pragya,
you
please.
interfere
Charu
with
Pragya,
what
please.
I speak.
Charu
They can't
Pragya.
even wait for
Charu
their own
Pragya.
turn to speak.
Charu Pragya, please go ahead. I'll give you the time to respond. Charu, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so you know how the opposition passes off, even now, even on your show, their opinion is fact by agreeing to believe some Chinese agency or hearsay instead of what your own defense ministry or external affairs ministry is saying. So that is exactly what the government is trying to curb. You have to ensure that you know the source of your information, that you are able to corroborate your information and tell us where you got that so-called fact from. And there has to be a mechanism in place which checks that. There will be a credible separate body which ensures that all sections are satisfied. Now, we cannot be somebody who works like the Congress and says, it is a fact, I am telling you, kyunki hamare jawan pit rahe hain. All that has to stop because that's absolutely not a fact.
Let's see how that pans out, Charu, and in the days to come, we'll get to know how proportionately, legitimately, and how sparingly
Mamata Banerjee says that there was no
the government
checkpoint
is
scam
going
in
to
Calcutta.
exercise this power. I'm very sorry I'm short of time. Charu Pragya, Sujata Paul, Rahul Narayan, Jiten Jain. Thank you everyone for joining us on the broadcast. Moving on to another big story of the day.